Hey everyone, welcome to today's Deep Dive. We're going to be tackling 100 mental models.
It's a pretty fascinating book.
It is. It's a bit intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds a little intense, right? Like, are we going to be able to think like Einstein after this?
I don't know about Einstein, but at least maybe make some, slightly smarter decisions in our daily lives.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
So what's really cool about this book is that, it isn't just a list. It's not like, here are 100 things, memorize them, and you'll be a genius. It's more about how all these different models kind of connect.
Yeah, and how you can build a mental framework out of these models.
Okay.
It's almost like upgrading your mental operating system, if you will.
I like that, a mental upgrade. So we're talking about, borrowing ideas from philosophy, math, physics.
It's all different fields.
All these different fields to see the world in a new way, in a new light.
And it's a lot to cover.
Yeah. Where do we even begin with that?
Well, the book dives right in to philosophy, actually. It starts with some of the kind of the heavy hitters of philosophy. Mm-hmm. We've got Viktor Frankl, his search for meaning, the Stoics, their pursuit of tranquility, even Plato's allegory of the cave.
I remember that from college, vaguely.
Oh, yeah, it's a good one. What were your initial thoughts on those? What jumped out at you?
I think the one that really kind of hit me was the Plato's cave. Just the idea that, we could be mistaking like shadows on a wall for reality.
Like there's something more.
Yeah, it's a powerful image and it's slightly unsettling, right? Like, what are we missing? What's out there?
Yeah, it makes you question your own perceptions a bit. That's what Plato is getting at. Mm-hmm. He argued that there's this deeper reality, this true reality that exists beyond what we can actually perceive with our senses. And it's accessible through reason. And it's almost like a call to action, right? You got to question your assumptions and you got to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's Stoicism, which I feel like is super relevant these days. Everything is so chaotic.
Absolutely.
The book talks about how Stoics kind of like focus on what they can control, like their own reactions and virtue, to find calm amidst that chaos.
Yeah, and it's not just about suppressing all your emotions. It's about focusing on what really matters. Yeah. A Stoic would say that by accepting what you can't control, you free yourself up to actually focus on what you can.
Okay.
Which are your responses, your choices.
That's a really helpful distinction, I think. So it's not like becoming, emotionless, right, but it's more about choosing your battles wisely.
That's a good way to put it.
But let's move on from the ancient wisdom for a second and talk a little math.
Okay.
I'll admit, not my strongest subject, but even I can see how understanding things like probability and algorithms can be like incredibly useful in life.
Absolutely, and they're everywhere. I mean, just think about it. Understanding probability can help you make better decisions in situations that involve chance, like if you're playing cards or investing, things like that. And algorithms, they are everywhere. They influence what you see online, what products you're shown, even who you might connect with on social media.
It's true. They are sneaky, those algorithms. Speaking of mind-blowing, the book section on physics actually touches on things like critical mass, reciprocity, even Einstein's theory of relativity. I'm feeling a bit out of my depth here.
Well, these are complex concepts, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But they have some very practical applications. So critical mass, for example, that explains how small actions can actually snowball into large-scale changes. Think about viral trends.
Oh.
They start small, but then they just gain momentum until they reach that tipping point,
That makes total sense. So it's not just about like the size of the action, but also like the timing.
The timing and context.
Yeah, okay. And then reciprocity. That one's pretty interesting.
It is. It's this beautiful idea that actions have equal and opposite reactions, but it's not just, a physics thing. It shows up in our relationships too. Yeah. Like what we give out, it tends to come back around.
I like that. The idea that kindness, generosity, even negativity has a way of echoing back to us.
Absolutely.
Makes you think twice about how you treat others.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to chemistry.
Okay.
I have to admit, my knowledge of chemistry is pretty much limited to baking mishaps.
I hear you.
What can we learn from the kinetic theory again?
Well, remember those baking mishaps?
Oh, no.
The kinetic theory, that explains why those happen.
Okay.
It tells us that even seemingly solid objects are actually made up of these tiny particles in constant motion.
Oh, wow.
So that's why ice melts, water boils. That's even why your kitchen smells amazing when those cookies are baking.
Wow. So even baking is like governed by these fundamental laws of chemistry.
It is.
There's a lot more to those baking mishaps than meets the eye. Speaking of like fascinating processes, the book's chapter on biology
Yes.
dives into concepts like evolution, cooperation, adaptation. What stood out to you from that section?
Well, what's amazing about biology, I think, is that it reveals just how interconnected life truly is.
Yeah.
From the intricate dance of DNA to the delicate balance of ecosystems, everything is connected.
It really does make you appreciate like the
Appreciate
complexity
that.
and resilience of nature.
Yeah, it does. And it prompts us to ask, what can we learn from the natural world? What does cooperation in nature teach us about our own potential for collaboration?
Those are great questions.
They are.
Okay, now brace yourselves because we're about to enter the wonderfully weird world of psychology.
Okay.
The book delves into the psychology of human misjudgment, drawing heavily from Charlie Munger's famous speech on the subject.
It's a good one.
Prepare to have your minds blown.
Well, I think what Munger so brilliantly highlights is that our minds, while, they are remarkable, they're also prone to these systematic errors in thinking,
Oh, no. Okay.
cognitive biases.
Okay.
And these biases can influence our perceptions,
Okay.
our judgments, ultimately, our decisions.
So we're all just like walking around with these hidden biases that are messing with our thinking.
We are.
Tell me more.
Okay, so let's start with over-optimism. I think we've all fallen prey to that one at some point in our lives.
Oh, yeah.
It's this tendency to overestimate the likelihood of good things happening and underestimate the bad. So, if you're starting a business and you think, oh, it's guaranteed to be a success.
Oh, ouch. I've definitely been there.
We all have.
Yeah.
What about social proof? That one's pretty pervasive as well.
Social proof. That sounds familiar. What is that again?
Yeah, so social proof is all about conforming to what others are doing, especially when we're uncertain. So that's why we tend to follow trends, choose popular products, or we get swayed by online reviews.
Oh, it's like that feeling of, well, everyone else is doing it, so it must be the right thing to do.
Exactly.
Like a herd mentality.
Yeah.
What other biases do we need to, watch out for?
Well, deprival superreaction is an interesting one.
Okay.
This explains why we tend to overreact to potential losses.
Okay.
So think about how much more upset you'd be to lose $10
Yeah.
than you'd be happy to find $10.
That's so true, though. It's like the pain of loss is amplified
It is.
compared to the joy of gain.
Wow.
That's loss aversion in action.
It is.
Okay, what else? These biases are like little mental gremlins messing with our decisions.
They are. Let's talk about contrast misreaction tendency. This highlights how easily our perceptions are actually swayed by comparisons.
Okay.
So we judge things relative to their context, not their absolute value.
So it's all about, framing.
Framing, exactly.
Like how a store might put, a super expensive item next to a slightly less expensive one to make that second one seem like a bargain even though it's still overpriced.
Exactly. And that is a classic marketing tactic, by the way, that plays on that very bias.
Oh, sneaky. Okay, give me another one of these mind-bending biases.
Okay, let's explore stress influence tendency.
Ooh, that sounds rough.
As you might guess, it's all about how stress
Yeah.
impacts our thinking.
I think we can all relate to that one. Stress makes it really hard to think straight sometimes.
Absolutely, it does. And under stress, we tend to become more reactive, more impulsive.
Well, for sure.
And prone to errors in judgment. So it's why taking a step back to just calm down before you make a big decision can be so important.
Deep breaths, everybody.
Yeah.
Deep breaths. Okay, what other bias gremlins are we dealing with here?
Okay, this one is a fascinating one. Availability misweighing tendency.
Availability. Okay, that one sounds a little complicated. What is that?
So it describes how easily we overestimate the likelihood of events that are really vivid or memorable.
So if something is emotionally charged or easily recalled, we're more likely to think it's common, even if it's not.
Precisely. And this bias can actually distort our perceptions of risk,
Oh, wow.
leading us to worry about about unlikely events while neglecting more probable threats.
It's like how people are more afraid of flying than driving.
Exactly.
Even though, like, statistically, driving is way more dangerous.
Much more.
Plane crashes are rare, but they're they're highly publicized.
They are.
And really emotionally charged.
Yeah.
So they kind of stick in our minds more.
Exactly. That's a great example.
Okay.
Now, for a bias that's a bit more encouraging, reason-respecting tendency.
Okay.
This highlights our human capacity for rational thought
Okay.
and our willingness to be persuaded by logical arguments.
Okay, that's a relief. So we're not completely ruled by our emotions and biases.
No.
We do have, like, the ability to think critically and be swayed by logic and evidence.
Reason-respecting tendency reminds us that we have the potential to make thoughtful and informed decisions when we engage in that reasoned discourse.
Yeah.
And we consider evidence carefully.
That's a refreshing reminder.
It is.
Okay. What other fascinating biases are, like, lurking in our mental machinery?
Okay, let's talk about use it or lose it tendency. This one focuses on the impact of practice and repetition on our skills and knowledge.
So if we don't use our skills, they'll just kind of, like, rust away.
They do. Yeah. Mental atrophy.
Mental atrophy, yeah. And this tendency highlights the importance of continuous learning and practice for maintaining our cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
Just like we need to exercise our bodies to stay in shape, we need to challenge our minds.
Keep them sharp.
To keep them sharp. It's a good reminder to keep learning and growing throughout our lives. Use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it. And this next one's a bit more serious. Drug misinfluence tendency.
Yeah, I think that was pretty self-explanatory.
It is.
Drugs, both legal and illegal, can have a huge impact on our thinking and behavior.
Absolutely. And this tendency underscores the importance of responsible substance use and the potential dangers of addiction. It's a reminder that our cognitive abilities, they're precious and they can be compromised pretty easily.
For sure. Okay, moving on to a slightly less intimidating topic.
Yeah.
Senescence misinfluence tendency.
Yeah.
That one sounds a bit like something out of a science fiction novel.
It does. But really, it just refers to the cognitive changes that come with aging.
Oh, okay.
As we get older, our mental sharpness, our ability to learn new things may decline.
So it's not just a myth that, like, our brains slow down as we get older.
There are variations between individuals.
Yeah.
But senescence misinfluence tendency does highlight that aging does have an impact on our cognitive abilities.
It's a reminder to be, patient with ourselves and others as we age.
Absolutely.
And to find ways to, stay mentally active and engaged. What other biases should we be aware of?
Okay, this one is particularly relevant in today's world. Authority misinfluence tendency.
Okay.
It describes our susceptibility to being influenced by authority figures.
Okay.
Even when they might be wrong or acting unethically.
Oh, that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
Like, blindly following authority without questioning can lead to some serious problems.
Absolutely. And it reminds us of the importance of critical thinking, questioning authority, and holding those in power accountable.
It's a powerful reminder that, we shouldn't just accept things at face value, even if they come from someone with a lot of authority or influence. We need to think for ourselves.
Yeah, we do.
What other mental pitfalls should we be watching out for?
Let's talk about twaddle tendency.
Twaddle?
Twaddle tendency.
It sounds like something we could all probably cut back on.
It is.
What is twaddle tendency?
So it highlights our tendency to engage in meaningless or unproductive chatter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of that. Like, just filling silence with unnecessary chatter.
We all have. And this tendency, points to our inclination to engage in idle talk, gossip, or superficial conversations, often to avoid those uncomfortable silences.
Okay.
Or deeper topics.
Yeah. So sometimes it's better to just say nothing at all.
It can be. This tendency encourages us to be more mindful of our communication and focusing on substance and meaning over those empty words.
Okay. I'm going to make an effort to be more mindful of my own twaddle tendency. Now, this next bias sounds a bit more ominous. Lollapalooza tendency. What in the world is that?
So this one is fascinating.
Okay.
But it can also be quite dangerous.
Oh.
Yeah. So it describes how multiple biases can actually combine to create this supercharged effect.
Oh.
Yeah, leading to these extreme outcomes.
Like a bias superstorm.
A bias superstorm. That's a great way to put it. It highlights the potential for these biases to actually work in concert.
Yeah.
Amplifying our cognitive distortions and leading to decisions that are far from rational.
Thanks. It's like a mental chain reaction of bad decisions waiting to happen.
Yeah.
So how do we protect ourselves from this Lollapalooza effect?
Well, awareness is key.
Okay.
By recognizing those individual biases
Yeah.
and understanding how they can interact, we can be more vigilant
Okay.
in situations where multiple biases might be at play.
It's like knowing the warning signs of a mental storm.
Yes.
And taking shelter before it hits. Okay, I think I've had enough of biases for now. My brain is feeling a little overloaded.
I hear ya.
Let's move on to some other mental models from the book. What's next on our list?
Okay, let's dive into the world of economics. While it might not sound, as exciting as psychology,
Right.
economics offers some incredibly powerful models for understanding how resources are allocated, how choices are made, how systems function.
All right, I'm game.
Yeah.
Economics might not be the most glamorous topic, but I'm always up for expanding my mental toolbox. What economic insights await us in 100 mental models?
Well, let's start with a fundamental concept. Accounting.
Okay.
Now, while it might sound a bit dry, understanding these basic accounting principles is essential for making informed financial decisions.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would be important both personally
Yes.
and professionally. No one wants to be in the dark when it comes to their finances.
Think of it as the language of business.
Okay.
It provides a framework for tracking income, expenses, assets, liabilities. It gives us that clear picture of our financial health.
So it's not just about like crunching numbers,
Right.
but it's about understanding the story behind those numbers.
The story, exactly. It provides that framework for making sense of the information.
Yeah.
And making more informed decisions about how we manage our resources.
Okay, that makes sense. What other economic insights can we glean from 100 mental models?
Let's talk about opportunity costs.
Opportunity costs. I've heard that term thrown around before, but I'm not entirely sure what it means.
Yeah, this is a crucial concept that often gets overlooked.
Okay.
So opportunity costs refer to the potential benefits we miss out on when we choose one option over another. It's the value of the next best alternative that we give up.
So every decision comes with a trade-off.
It does.
Like we're always giving up something
You are.
to get something else.
You are.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting way to think about, decision making.
It is.
It's not just about what we gain, but also what we're giving up in the process. Okay, what other economic wisdom can we glean from 100 mental models?
Let's explore the concept of circle of competence.
Okay.
So this model emphasizes the importance of knowing our limits
Cool.
and sticking to areas where we have knowledge and expertise.
So it's about like playing to our strengths.
Yes.
And avoiding areas where we lack experience.
Yes.
Kind of like, knowing your lane and staying in it.
Knowing your lane, staying in it. Exactly.
Okay.
It encourages us to identify those areas where we really have that expertise and avoid venturing into areas where we lack the necessary knowledge.
That seems like a recipe for success.
It can be.
Focus on what you're good at.
Yeah.
Avoid costly mistakes.
Precisely. By operating within that circle of competence, we can make better decisions, minimize those risks,
Yeah.
and maximize our chances of success.
Okay, I'm liking this model. It's all about playing it smart
Yeah.
and focusing on what you know best. What other economic insights can we explore from 100 mental models?
Let's talk about creative destruction, a concept that sounds a bit paradoxical.
Creative destruction. How can something be both creative and destructive?
I know, it's kind of a head scratcher.
Yeah.
So this model, developed by economist Joseph Schumpeter,
Okay.
it describes the process of innovation and technological advancements leading to the displacement of existing industries or businesses.
Oh, okay.
So it's this idea that progress often involves disrupting that status quo and creating new ways of doing things, which can sometimes lead to the demise of old ways.
So it's like this constant cycle of innovation and obsolescence.
It is.
The old makes way for the new, even if it's, a bit messy along the way.
It can be a bit messy, but that's progress for you. And this understanding helps us appreciate the dynamic nature of markets and the inevitability of change.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that things are constantly evolving and that we need to be adaptable and embrace innovation to actually thrive in the long run.
Okay, that's a really powerful concept. Creative destruction.
Yeah.
It reminds us that change is constant.
It is.
And those who kind of like embrace innovation
Yeah.
are more likely to succeed. What other economic models should we add to our mental arsenal?
Okay, let's talk about a fundamental principle of economics, supply and demand.
I'm guessing this one's pretty straightforward.
It is, but incredibly powerful.
Okay.
Yeah. So it describes the relationship between the availability of a product or service and the desire for it.
So if demand is high
Yes,
and supply is low, prices go up.
they do.
Like those, crazy concert tickets.
Oh, yeah.
They get scalped for a fortune.
That's a perfect example. So that interaction of supply and demand determines the price of goods and services in a market economy. And understanding this principle can help us make sense of pricing trends, market fluctuations, even those crazy concert ticket prices.
Okay, so supply and demand, it's all about finding that sweet spot.
It is.
Where the amount of something available meets the level of desire for it.
Exactly.
Okay. What other economic gems can we unearth from 100 mental models?
Okay, let's explore comparative advantage, a principle that explains how individuals, businesses, or even countries can benefit from specializing in what they do best.
So it's about focusing on your strengths.
Yeah.
And trading with others who have different strengths.
Yeah.
Kind of like a division of labor.
A division of labor.
Where everyone contributes what they're good at.
Exactly. And it highlights the benefits of specialization in trade. So even parties that aren't the absolute best at something can still benefit from focusing on their relative strengths.
It's a reminder that collaboration
Yes.
and interdependence can lead to greater prosperity.
Absolutely.
For everyone involved.
Absolutely.
We can achieve more by working together and leveraging each other's strengths than by trying to do everything ourselves.
It's a powerful concept for understanding the benefits of globalization and the interconnectedness of the global economy.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these economic models can be applied to a wide range of situations.
Yeah.
From personal finances to international trade.
We can.
What other mental models should we add to our economic toolkit?
Okay, let's revisit margin of safety, which we talked about a little earlier.
Okay.
In the context of biases.
Yeah.
Now, this concept, popularized by investor Benjamin Graham, it's also crucial in economics, particularly in investing.
So margin of safety, it's like having a buffer.
Yes.
Or cushion, to protect against unforeseen circumstances.
Precisely. So in investing, that means buying assets at a discount to their intrinsic value.
Okay.
And that provides a buffer against potential losses. But this concept can be applied, more broadly to decision making. It encourages us to be conservative in our estimates, and allow room for error.
That seems like a wise approach to navigating uncertainty.
It is.
And minimizing risk.
It is.
In any field.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that those unexpected events can and do happen, and it's always better to err on the side of caution.
Okay, I'm liking this model. It's all about playing it safe.
Yes.
And protecting yourself from the downside. What other economic concepts can help us make smarter decisions?
Okay, let's dive into the world of switching costs.
Switching costs.
Switching costs. So this explores the challenges and expenses involved in changing from one product, service, or system to another.
So it's like the price you pay for making a switch.
The price you pay, exactly.
Right.
So it can include things like learning a new system, transferring data, or even facing compatibility issues.
Oh, yeah.
They can be financial, time-consuming, or even emotional.
Oh, I bet businesses love using switching costs to their advantage.
Oh, they do. Yeah.
To make it harder for customers to leave.
Absolutely, they do. And understanding these switching costs can help us make more informed decisions about when it's worth making a change and when it's actually better to stick with the status quo.
Okay, so this model is all about weighing the costs and benefits.
It is.
Of making a switch.
It is.
Like a mental checklist.
Yeah.
To help us evaluate whether a change is truly worth the hassle.
It is. It is.
Okay, what's next on our economic exploration?
Okay, let's talk about specialization, a concept that's central to economic efficiency.
Specialization. I have a feeling this one is pretty straightforward.
It is. It refers to the division of labor,
Okay.
where individuals or businesses focus on specific tasks or areas of expertise.
So it's about like becoming really good at one thing
Yeah.
and letting others do what they're good at. Kind of like, a team of experts all working together.
Yes.
Each contributing their unique skills.
Exactly. And this leads to increased efficiency and productivity as individuals develop their skills and knowledge, host, speaker, and allows us to produce those goods and services far more effectively than if everyone tried to do everything themselves.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we can achieve more by working together.
Yeah.
And leveraging each other's strengths.
Yeah.
Collaboration and specialization are key. What other economic insights await us in 100 mental models?
Let's explore a concept
Okay.
that has implications for resource management
Okay.
and sustainability. The tragedy of the commons.
Tragedy of the commons. That sounds a bit ominous.
It does, a little bit. So this model highlights the potential for shared resources to be depleted or degraded when individuals act in their own self-interest without considering those long-term consequences.
So it's like when everyone takes more than their fair share.
Exactly.
And eventually there's nothing left for anyone.
Yeah.
Kind of like overfishing. Or polluting a shared water source.
Perfect examples, yeah. And it illustrates the importance of responsible resource management and the need for cooperation to protect those shared assets. It's a reminder that our individual actions can have a cumulative effect on the well-being of the whole.
That's a powerful lesson.
It is.
It's like a cautionary tale about the dangers of short-sightedness.
Yeah.
And the importance of thinking about the collective good.
Absolutely.
Okay, what's next on our economic adventure?
Okay, let's explore a fascinating analogy
Okay.
known as Mr. Market. This is a concept introduced by investor Benjamin Graham.
Mr. Market. That sounds like a character from a children's book.
It does. So this model personifies the stock market
Okay.
as this moody and unpredictable character
Oh, I like him already.
who offers to buy or sell stocks at varying prices
Okay.
each day.
So it's like the market is a person
Yes,
with its own whims and emotions.
that's the idea. And it emphasizes that those stock prices can fluctuate wildly
Okay.
based on investor sentiment, which can often be irrational
Oh.
and disconnected from the underlying value of the businesses.
So the key is to not get like caught up in the emotional roller coaster
That's right.
of the market.
That's right.
Just stay level-headed.
And this understanding encourages us to be patient,
Okay.
disciplined investors, focusing on that long-term value of businesses
Yeah.
rather than those short-term market fluctuations.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that the market can be irrational in the short term,
Oh, for sure.
but it tends to reflect that underlying value in the long run.
Okay, so this model is all about staying rational.
Yeah.
And not letting, emotions kind of like cloud our judgment.
Yes.
When it comes to investing. It's about, playing the long game.
Yeah.
And not getting spooked by Mr. Market's mood swings.
That's a good way to put it.
What other economic insights can we glean from 100 mental models?
Okay, let's shift gears and explore a model
Okay.
from the realm of geography.
Yeah.
The importance of geography.
Geography. I thought we were talking about mental models, not maps. What does geography have to do with thinking and decision making?
I know it might seem like a straightforward subject,
Okay.
but geography actually plays this crucial role in shaping history, politics, economics,
Oh, wow.
even culture.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how our physical environment
Okay.
influences the course of events and shapes our lives.
So it's not just about like knowing where countries are located on a map,
Right.
but it's about understanding how geographical factors like location,
Locate.
resources, climate, terrain
All of that.
influence the development of societies and the interactions between them.
That's right. And it reminds us that we're not just, individuals operating in a vacuum.
Yeah.
We're part of this larger interconnected world
Yeah.
where geographical factors play this significant role.
It's like appreciating the stage on which the drama of human history unfolds.
Yes.
Geography sets the scene
It does.
and influences the actors.
It does. And understanding geography can
Yeah.
help us make sense of global events,
Okay.
political dynamics,
Yeah.
economic trends, even cultural differences. It provides context, and it helps us see that bigger picture.
Okay, that makes sense. Geography is more than just, maps and locations.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the interconnectedness of our world.
It is.
And how our physical environment shapes our lives and history.
It does.
Okay. What other mental models should we explore?
Let's dive into the fascinating world of history.
Okay.
Where we'll explore models that shed light on the patterns, the trends, and the forces that have shaped the course of human civilization.
All right. I'm ready for a history lesson. What historical insights await us in 100 mental models?
Okay, let's start with a concept that's particularly relevant in today's, interconnected world. Globalization.
Globalization. That's definitely a hot topic these days.
It is. Yeah.
But what exactly does it mean? It seems like everyone has a different opinion about it.
They do. So it refers to the increasing interconnectedness and interdependence of nations, economies, cultures, societies across the world.
Okay.
And it's driven by advances in technology, transportation, communication, which have really shrunk the world and made it so much easier for people, goods, and ideas to flow across borders.
So it's like the world is becoming a smaller, more integrated place.
Exactly.
Right.
And understanding this helps us appreciate the complexities of the modern world, from global trade and financial markets to the spread of ideas and culture, and even challenges like pandemics and climate change.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can see how understanding globalization is pretty crucial for navigating the 21st century.
Yeah.
What other historical models can help us make sense of the world?
Let's talk about a model that explores the patterns of power and influence throughout history, the rise and fall of empires.
The rise and fall of empires. That sounds a bit dramatic.
Yeah.
But also fascinating. What can we learn from the empires of the past?
Well, this model explores the historical patterns that have led to the rise and decline of powerful empires throughout history.
So it's like a cautionary tale for nations.
It can be.
That seek to dominate the world stage.
Indeed. Understanding this model highlights those factors that contribute to a nation's ascendance, such as, economic prosperity, military strength, technological innovation, effective leadership. It also illuminates those factors that can lead to its decline, such as internal strife, overexpansion, complacency, corruption, and the failure to adapt to changing circumstances.
It's a reminder that power is often transient.
Yeah.
And that even the mightiest empires can crumble over time if they don't adapt and evolve. What other historical insights can we glean from 100 mental models?
Let's delve into the concept of turning points in history.
Turning points. I'm guessing those are like events that have dramatically altered the course of history, like wars or revolutions, or major discoveries,
technological advancements, scientific discoveries,
okay,
natural disasters, even individual acts of courage or leadership,
okay,
that have had a profound and lasting impact on human civilization.
So these are like the moments that have shaped the world as we know it.
Exactly. And understanding these turning points in history helps us appreciate the interconnectedness of events and the long-term consequences of seemingly isolated incidents.
It's like seeing how these seemingly small events can have like a ripple effect throughout history, shaping the destinies of nations and the course of human civilization.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's zoom in on a specific historical turning point.
Okay.
The printing press and the spread of knowledge.
The printing press.
Yeah, that sounds like something straight out of a history textbook.
Oh no, right?
What makes the printing press such a significant turning point?
Well, while it might seem like ancient technology now.
Oh, for sure.
The invention of the printing press in the 15th century really had this revolutionary impact on the spread of knowledge, literacy, and the dissemination of ideas.
Okay.
So before the printing press, books were painstakingly copied by hand.
Oh, wow.
Making them expensive.
Yeah.
And accessible only to a privileged few.
So the printing press, made it possible to mass produce books.
It did.
Making knowledge
Yes.
more affordable.
More affordable.
And available to a wider audience.
Yeah, exactly. And this led to a surge in literacy, the spread of new ideas, and the challenging of traditional authorities.
Oh.
It was a pivotal moment in the democratization of knowledge.
Yeah.
And it paved the way for the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment,
Wow.
and the modern information age.
Wow. The printing press was a real game changer.
It was.
It's amazing to think about how like a single invention could have such a profound and lasting impact on the course of history.
It really is.
Okay. What other historical insights can we explore?
Okay, let's shift gears and explore a model that's particularly relevant in today's world of political polarization and ideological divides. Extremely intense ideology.
Extremely intense ideology. That sounds a bit dangerous.
It can be.
Right.
So this model highlights the potential for strong ideological beliefs to actually cloud judgment, limit critical thinking, and lead to intolerance and conflict.
So it's about like being wary of dogmatism.
Yes.
And the dangers of blind faith.
Yeah.
In any ideology, whether it's, political, religious, even scientific.
Exactly. It encourages us to approach beliefs with that critical eye, to be open to alternative perspectives and to avoid the pitfalls of fanaticism. It's about recognizing that even well-intentioned beliefs, when held too rigidly, can actually become a barrier to understanding, empathy, and progress.
That's a really important point.
Yes.
It's like a reminder to stay humble, be willing to listen to other viewpoints, and to avoid becoming too attached to any single ideology.
Absolutely.
Okay, what other historical insights can we explore?
Okay, let's explore a model that's all about challenging our own beliefs.
Okay.
Disconfirming evidence.
Disconfirming evidence. That sounds a bit counterintuitive.
It does. But this model emphasizes the importance of actively seeking out information that actually challenges our existing views, rather than just reinforcing what we already believed.
So it's about like being open to being wrong.
Yes.
And revising our beliefs in light of new evidence.
Exactly. It's a key principle of scientific thinking, but it's also incredibly valuable in everyday life. And it encourages us to be intellectually honest, to avoid that confirmation bias, and to be willing to change our minds when presented with compelling evidence. It's about recognizing that our beliefs are not static, but they should evolve as we encounter, new information and new perspectives.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's like a reminder to stay curious, to be open to new ideas, and to be willing to admit when we're wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. What other mental models can help us be more effective learners and thinkers?
Let's talk about a model that's all about engaging with ideas in a meaningful way. Reading and note-taking.
Reading and note-taking.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty basic. Isn't that something we all learned in school?
It is. But effective reading and note-taking are crucial for absorbing information, retaining knowledge, and developing those critical thinking skills. It's not just about passively consuming information, but actively engaging with it.
So it's not just about like highlighting passages or jotting down random notes. It's about like summarizing key points, asking questions, making connections to other knowledge, and reflecting on the author's arguments and evidence.
Exactly. Effective reading and note-taking involve making the material your own, connecting it to your existing knowledge, and engaging in that dialogue with the author. It's a reminder that learning is an active process that requires effort and engagement.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not just about reading the words on the page, but about interacting with them. Questioning them, and making connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about turning information into knowledge.
Yes, it is.
Okay, what other mental models can we explore?
Let's dive into the world of logical fallacies, which are those common errors in reasoning that can lead to flawed arguments and faulty conclusions.
Logical fallacies. Those sound like something I should be on lookout for in online debates. What exactly are logical fallacies?
So logical fallacies, they're essentially tricks or shortcuts in thinking
Okay.
that can lead to those invalid conclusions.
Okay.
And they're often used unintentionally.
Yeah.
But they can also be used deliberately to manipulate or mislead.
So understanding these fallacies can help us like spot bad arguments,
Spot them, yes.
avoid being misled,
Yeah.
and even make stronger arguments ourselves.
Exactly. So by recognizing these common patterns of flawed reasoning, we can become more critical thinkers, we can evaluate information more effectively, and make those more informed decisions. And we can also avoid making those same mistakes
Yeah.
in our own reasoning.
Okay, let's dive into some of these logical fallacies. I'm ready to sharpen my critical thinking skills and become a fallacy detecting ninja. What's the first fallacy we should be aware of?
Okay, let's start with the classic fallacy known as ad hominem, which translates to the person.
Okay.
So this fallacy involves attacking the person,
Okay.
making the argument, rather than addressing the argument itself.
So it's like trying to discredit someone's ideas
Yeah,
by attacking their character
Yes.
or their personal quality.
exactly. And it's a common tactic used to distract from the substance of an argument
Okay.
and appeal to emotion rather than reason. It's a way of avoiding engaging with the actual ideas being presented.
Okay, I can see how that would be like a really manipulative tactic.
It can,
Especially in like, heated debates or online arguments.
Yeah.
It's like a way of saying, I don't like you, therefore your ideas must be wrong.
yeah.
What's another logical fallacy we should be on the lookout for?
Let's explore the straw man fallacy.
Strong man.
Straw man. This fallacy involves misrepresenting an opponent's argument
Okay.
to make it easier to attack.
So it's like setting up a weak or distorted version of someone's argument,
Yeah.
and then knocking it down, making it look like you've won the argument when you haven't actually addressed the real issue.
Exactly. So the straw man fallacy is a way of avoiding engaging with that actual substance of an opposing viewpoint,
Yeah.
and resorting to a superficial and misleading critique. It's a dishonest tactic that often leads to unproductive arguments.
It's a reminder that we should always strive to represent, opposing viewpoints
Yeah.
fairly and accurately, even if we disagree with them.
Absolutely.
It's about engaging in honest and respectful dialogue, not trying to score points by distorting someone else's position.
Exactly.
What other fallacies do we need to be aware of?
Let's talk about the bandwagon fallacy,
Okay.
which appeals to the popularity or widespread acceptance of an idea
Okay.
as evidence of its validity.
So it's like saying, like, if everyone else is doing it, it must be right.
That's it. That's the basic idea, and it plays on our desire to conform
Yeah.
and our tendency to be influenced by that social pressure.
It's a reminder that popularity doesn't equal truth,
It doesn't.
and that we should always think critically about ideas, regardless of how widespread they might be.
Absolutely.
Okay, what other fallacies should we add to our fallacy detecting toolkit?
Let's explore the appeal to authority fallacy.
Okay.
So this fallacy involves citing an authority figure or expert
Okay.
to support an argument, even when that authority might not be credible or relevant to the topic at hand.
So it's like saying, like, this famous person believes it, so it must be true.
That's the gist of it, yeah. And the fallacy can be misleading
Okay.
if the authority cited is not a legitimate expert on the subject,
Yeah.
or if their views are biased or outdated,
Right.
or if their expertise is in a different field altogether.
It's a reminder that we should always, like, evaluate the credibility of sources,
Yeah.
and not just blindly accept claims just because they come from someone with a fancy title or a lot of followers.
Exactly.
What's another fallacy we should be wary of?
Let's talk about the false dilemma fallacy.
Okay.
This fallacy presents only two options or choices when in reality there might be other possibilities.
So it's like creating a false sense of urgency.
Yes.
Or forcing people to choose between two extremes when there might be like a middle ground or other options altogether.
Exactly. And this fallacy oversimplifies complex issues and limits our thinking by artificially narrowing down the options.
It's a reminder that we should always, like, think critically
Yeah.
about the choices that are presented to us, and consider whether there might be like other alternatives or perspectives that have been overlooked.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone box you into a false choice.
Exactly.
What's another fallacy we should add to our mental arsenal?
Okay, let's explore the hasty generalization fallacy.
Okay.
So this fallacy involves drawing a broad conclusion
Okay.
based on a small or unrepresentative sample of evidence.
So it's like making a sweeping statement
Yeah.
based on like a single anecdote.
Yes.
Or a limited experience, like saying, I met a rude teenager today, so all teenagers must be rude.
That's a perfect example. And this fallacy often leads to stereotypes and prejudices as we overgeneralize from those limited observations to entire groups of people.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we should be, cautious about making generalizations.
Yes.
And always strive to base our conclusions on sufficient and representative evidence.
Absolutely.
So don't judge a whole group of people based on a single experience.
Don't do it.
Okay, what's another fallacy we should be wary of?
Let's talk about the correlation causation fallacy, which
Yeah.
we touched upon briefly earlier. This fallacy assumes that because two things are correlated
Okay.
or happen together, one must cause the other.
That's right. Just because two things are related doesn't necessarily mean that one causes the other. There could be other factors at play, or the correlation might be purely coincidental.
So we need to be careful about jumping to conclusions about cause and effect. Correlation doesn't automatically equal causation. What's a good example of this fallacy in action?
Consider the correlation between ice cream sales and crime rates. Both tend to increase during the summer months. Does that mean ice cream causes crime?
Of course not. It's more likely that the hot weather is a contributing factor to both increased ice cream sales and increased crime rates.
Exactly. There's a correlation, but not a causal relationship. It's important to look beyond superficial connections and consider other factors that might be at play. What's another fallacy we should be on the lookout for?
Okay, give me another one of these sneaky fallacies. I'm starting to see them everywhere.
Let's explore the anecdotal evidence fallacy. This fallacy relies on personal stories or isolated examples as evidence, rather than on more reliable forms of data or research.
So it's like saying, my grandfather smoked his whole life and lived to be 90, so smoking can't be that bad for you.
That's a classic example. The anecdotal evidence fallacy ignores the fact that individual experiences can vary widely and that anecdotal evidence is not a substitute for rigorous scientific research. Just because something worked for one person doesn't mean it will work for everyone, or that it's based on sound evidence. It's a reminder that we should be wary of relying too heavily on personal stories or isolated examples and always seek out more reliable sources of information when making important decisions. Okay, what other fallacies should we add to our mental arsenal?
Let's talk about the appeal to emotion fallacy. This fallacy attempts to manipulate emotions rather than using logic or evidence to persuade.
So it's like using fear, anger, or guilt to sway people's opinions.
That's right. The appeal to emotion fallacy can be effective in the short term, but it's ultimately a manipulative tactic that undermines rational discourse.
It's a reminder that we should be wary of emotional appeals and always strive to base our judgments on reason and evidence, not just how something makes us feel.
Let's explore the tu quoque fallacy, which is Latin for you too. This fallacy attempts to deflect criticism by pointing out that the accuser is also guilty of the same or a similar wrongdoing.
So it's like saying, you can't criticize me for doing this because you do it too.
Exactly. The tu quoque fallacy is a distraction tactic that avoids addressing the actual issue at hand. It's a way of shifting the blame or deflecting responsibility rather than engaging in constructive dialogue.
It's a reminder that two wrongs don't make a right, and that we should focus on addressing the specific issue being discussed, rather than resorting to personal attacks or whataboutism. Okay, give me another one. I'm ready to become a fallacy-busting machine.
This next fallacy is a slippery one. Slippery slope. It argues that a particular action will inevitably lead to a series of negative consequences without providing sufficient evidence to support this claim.
So it's like saying, if we allow same-sex marriage, then next thing you know, people will be marrying their pets.
That's a classic slippery slope argument. This fallacy often relies on fear and exaggeration to make its point, and it ignores the possibility of alternative outcomes or mitigating factors.
It's a reminder that we should be wary of arguments that make dramatic predictions about the future without providing strong evidence to support those claims. We should demand evidence and not just accept slippery slope arguments at face value. Okay, what other fallacies are lurking out there?
Let's explore the appeal to tradition fallacy, which argues that something is right or good simply because it's been done that way for a long time.
So it's like saying, we've always done it this way, so there's no need to change, even if there might be better ways of doing things.
That's the basic idea. The appeal to tradition fallacy ignores the fact that traditions can be outdated, harmful, or simply ineffective.
It's a reminder that we should always be open to questioning traditions and considering whether there might be better, fairer, or more effective ways of doing things. Just because something's been done a certain way for a long time doesn't mean it's the best way. Okay, give me another fallacy to add to my mental arsenal.
Let's talk about the middle ground fallacy, which assumes that the compromise between two extreme positions is always the correct or most reasonable solution.
So it's like saying, if one person says the sky is blue and another person says the sky is green, then the truth must be somewhere in between, like a turquoise.
That's a good analogy. The middle ground fallacy ignores the fact that sometimes one extreme position might be entirely correct, while the other is completely wrong. Compromise can be a good thing, but it's not always the best or most truthful approach.
It's a reminder that we should always evaluate the merits of each position independently, rather than simply splitting the difference or assuming the truth lies somewhere in the middle. We should be critical thinkers and not just settle for a compromise that might not be accurate or just. Okay, what's the next fallacy on our list?
This next one is a bit tricky. The Texas sharpshooter fallacy. This fallacy involves selectively focusing on data that supports a pre-existing conclusion while ignoring evidence that contradicts it.
So it's like shooting a bunch of holes in a barn and then drawing a target around the tightest cluster, making it look like you're a really good shot when you were just shooting randomly.
That's a great way to visualize it. The Texas sharpshooter fallacy distorts data and misleads people by presenting a biased or incomplete picture of the evidence. It's a form of cherry-picking data to support a desired conclusion.
It's a reminder that we should always be wary of cherry-picking data and should strive to look at the full picture, even the parts that might challenge our assumptions. Okay, give me another one. These fallacies are like little mental traps waiting to snare us.
Let's talk about the personal incredulity fallacy. This fallacy dismisses an argument or idea simply because it's difficult to understand or believe.
So it's like saying, I don't understand how vaccines work, so they must be dangerous. Or quantum physics is too weird, so it can't be true.
Those are great examples. The personal incredulity fallacy assumes that if something is hard to grasp, it must be false. It ignores the fact that there are many things in the world that are complex and difficult to comprehend, but nonetheless true.
It's a reminder that our inability to understand something doesn't necessarily make it untrue. We should be open to learning new things and expanding our knowledge, even if it challenges our existing beliefs or requires us to put in some mental effort. Okay, what's next on our fallacy-busting adventure?
Let's explore the burden of proof fallacy, which is a common tactic in arguments. This fallacy shifts the responsibility of providing evidence from the person making a claim to the person challenging it.
So it's like saying, prove that I'm wrong, rather than providing evidence to support your own claim.
Exactly. The burden of proof fallacy is a way of avoiding accountability and placing the onus on the skeptic to disprove a claim rather than on the claimant to provide evidence in support of it. It's like saying, I don't need to prove my claim, you need to disprove it.
It's a reminder that the person making a claim should bear the responsibility of providing evidence to support it. If you're making a claim, you need to back it up with evidence, not just demand that others disprove it. Okay, what other fallacies should we add to our mental toolkit?
Let's talk about the no true Scotsman fallacy, which is a bit of a tongue twister. This fallacy involves redefining a group or category in a way that excludes counterexamples or exceptions that challenge a belief or stereotype.
So it's like saying, no true Scotsman would ever wear pants. And then when someone points out that they know a Scotsman who wears pants, responding with, well, then he's not a true Scotsman.
That's a perfect example. The no true Scotsman fallacy is a way of protecting a belief or stereotype from being challenged by arbitrarily changing the definition to exclude counterexamples. It's a form of circular reasoning that avoids engaging with evidence that contradicts a cherished belief.
It's a reminder that we should be willing to revise our beliefs or stereotypes when presented with evidence that contradicts them. We shouldn't try to preserve our beliefs by redefining terms or arbitrarily excluding counterexamples. What's another fallacy we should be aware of?
Let's explore the genetic fallacy, which focuses on origins. This fallacy dismisses an argument or idea based on its origin or history rather than on its merits.
So it's like saying, we can't trust this scientific theory because it was developed by a scientist from a rival country, or this political idea is bad because it originated from a group I don't like.
Those are great examples. The genetic fallacy ignores the fact that an idea's origins don't necessarily determine its validity. An idea can be good or bad regardless of where it came from or who proposed it.
It's a reminder that we should judge ideas based on their own merits, using reason and evidence, rather than on their source or historical context. What's next on our fallacy-busting journey?
Let's talk about the composition division fallacy, which can be a bit confusing. This fallacy assumes that what is true of the parts must also be true of the whole, or vice versa.
So it's like saying each individual atom in this table is invisible, therefore the entire table must be invisible. Or this company is very successful, so every employee must be highly skilled and competent.
Those are great examples. The composition fallacy assumes that what is true of the parts must also be true of the whole. The division fallacy works in reverse, assuming that what is true of the whole must also be true of the parts.
It's a reminder that we need to be careful about making inferences about the whole based on the parts, or about the parts based on the whole, without considering the specific context and relationships involved. Okay, give me another fallacy to add to my mental toolkit. I'm starting to feel like a fallacy detecting superhero.
Let's explore the appeal to nature fallacy, which can be particularly tempting in our health-conscious society. This fallacy argues that something is good or right simply because it's natural.
So it's like saying, this herb must be healthy because it's natural, or this chemical is dangerous because it's artificial.
Those are common examples. The appeal to nature fallacy ignores the fact that nature can be dangerous, harmful, or simply indifferent to human values. There are plenty of natural things that are harmful to human and plenty of artificial things that are beneficial.
It's a reminder that natural doesn't automatically equal good, and that we should evaluate things based on their specific properties and effects, rather than on whether they come from nature or a lab. Okay, what's another fallacy we should be on the lookout for?
Let's talk about the false cause fallacy, which can be tricky to spot. This fallacy mistakenly identifies a correlation between two things as evidence that one causes the other.
But we already talked about correlation versus causation. How is false cause different?
While related, the false cause fallacy goes beyond simply assuming causation from correlation. It often involves identifying the wrong cause or failing to consider alternative explanations.
So it's like saying, I started taking this new supplement and my health improved. Therefore, the supplement must be responsible for my improvement, when in reality, other factors, such as lifestyle changes or medical treatments, might be contributing to the improvement.
That's a great example. The false cause fallacy highlights the importance of carefully considering all potential explanations and not jumping to conclusions based on superficial correlations.
It's a reminder that we need to be critical thinkers and look beyond the obvious to identify the true causes of events. We shouldn't just assume a causal relationship because two things happen together. Okay, what other fallacies do we need to be wary of?
Let's explore a fallacy that's particularly relevant to gamblers. The gambler's fallacy. This fallacy assumes that past events can influence the outcome of random events, such as coin flips or roulette spins.
So it's like thinking that if a coin has landed on heads 5 times in a row, it's more likely to land on tails next time to even things out.
Exactly. The gambler's fallacy ignores the fact that each coin flip or roulette spin is an independent event, unaffected by previous outcomes. The odds reset with each new flip or spin.
It's a reminder that we shouldn't let past events cloud our judgment when it comes to random chance. Each event is independent, and the odds don't change based on past outcomes. What other fallacies should we add to our mental arsenal?
Let's talk about the red herring fallacy. This fallacy involves introducing an irrelevant topic or argument to distract from the main issue being discussed.
So it's like changing the subject or throwing in a distraction to avoid addressing the real problem. Like if I ask a politician about their stance on climate change and they start talking about the economy instead.
That's a classic red herring. The red herring fallacy is often used in political debates or arguments to divert attention from uncomfortable topics or to avoid answering difficult questions.
It's a reminder that we should stay focused on the central issue and not get sidetracked by irrelevant distractions. We should recognize attempts to shift the focus away from the real issue and demand that the conversation stay on track. Okay, what other fallacies should we be on the lookout for?
Let's explore the ad populum fallacy, which is Latin for to the people. This fallacy appeals to popular opinion or sentiment as evidence of something's truth or validity.
So it's like saying, most people believe in ghosts, so ghosts must exist, or everyone's buying this new gadget, so it must be amazing.
Those are great examples. The ad populum fallacy ignores the fact that popular opinion can be wrong or misleading, and that truth is not determined by a majority vote. Just because something is popular doesn't make it true.
It's a reminder that we should always think critically about ideas, regardless of how popular they might be, and base our conclusions on evidence, not just on what everyone else believes. What other fallacies do we need to be aware of?
Let's talk about the appeal to pity fallacy. This fallacy attempts to evoke sympathy or compassion to persuade someone to accept a conclusion or take a particular action.
So it's like trying to win an argument by making people feel sorry for you. Like, you can't give me a bad grade, I stayed up all night studying.
That's a good example. The appeal to pity fallacy can be manipulative as it bypasses logic and evidence and instead relies on emotional appeals. It's a way of trying to get people to agree with you out of sympathy rather than because of the strength of your argument.
It's a reminder that we should base our judgments on reason and evidence rather than on emotions or feelings of pity. We should be wary of attempts to manipulate our emotions and instead focus on the facts and logic of the argument being presented. Okay, give me another fallacy to add to my fallacy detecting arsenal.
Let's explore a fallacy that's often used to stifle dissent or criticism: the argument from silence. This fallacy assumes that if someone doesn't speak up or address a particular issue, it means they agree with it or have nothing to say about it.
So it's like assuming that someone's silence implies consent or agreement. Like if I'm in a meeting and someone proposes an idea and I don't say anything, it means I must agree with the idea.
That's right. The argument from silence fallacy ignores the fact that there could be many reasons why someone might choose not to speak, such as fear of reprisal, social pressure, lack of information, or simply not feeling comfortable expressing their views.
It's a reminder that we shouldn't interpret silence as agreement or consent and always strive to give people the benefit of the doubt. There might be good reasons why someone is choosing to remain silent, and it's unfair to assume their silence means agreement. What other fallacies should we be aware of?
Let's talk about the equivocation fallacy, which involves using language in a tricky way. This fallacy uses ambiguous language or shifts the meaning of words to mislead or deceive.
So it's like using wordplay or double meanings to make a point that wouldn't hold up under closer scrutiny. Like a politician saying, "I support family values," but leaving the definition of family values vague and open to interpretation.
That's a good example. The equivocation fallacy can be tricky to spot, as it often relies on subtle shifts in meaning or the use of words with multiple interpretations.
It's a reminder that we should always pay close attention to the language being used and be wary of vague or ambiguous terms. We should demand clarity and not allow people to use slippery language to get away with making weak or misleading arguments. Okay, give me another fallacy to add to my mental arsenal.
Let's explore a fallacy that's closely related to equivocation: the amphiboly fallacy. This fallacy exploits grammatical ambiguity or the structure of a sentence to create a misleading or false conclusion.
So it's like using a poorly worded sentence or a grammatically ambiguous phrase to twist the meaning. Like the classic example, "I saw the man with binoculars." Did I see a man who was holding binoculars, or did I use binoculars to see a man?
That's a perfect example. The amphiboly fallacy can be used to create humorous misunderstandings, but it can also be employed in more serious contexts to mislead or deceive.
It's a reminder that we should always strive for clarity and precision in our language and be wary of statements that could be interpreted in multiple ways. We should demand clear and unambiguous language to avoid being misled by grammatical trickery. What other fallacies should we be aware of?
Let's talk about the false analogy fallacy. This fallacy draws a comparison between two things that are not actually similar in relevant ways, leading to a faulty conclusion.
So it's like saying governments are like businesses, so they should be run like businesses, even though governments and businesses have very different goals, structures, and responsibilities.
That's a good example. The false analogy fallacy ignores the fact that governments and businesses have different purposes, operate under different constraints, and are accountable to different stakeholders. Just because two things share some superficial similarities doesn't mean they're analogous in all relevant ways.
It's a reminder that we should be cautious about drawing analogies and ensure that the things being compared are truly similar in relevant ways. What other fallacies should we add to our fallacy detecting toolkit?
Let's explore the affirming the consequent fallacy. This fallacy mistakenly assumes that if the consequent of a conditional statement is true, then the antecedent must also be true.
Okay, that one sounds a bit technical. Can you break it down for me?
Sure. Consider the statement. If it's raining, then the streets are wet. Affirming the consequent would be saying, the streets are wet, therefore it must be raining.
But the streets could be wet for other reasons, like a sprinkler, or someone washing their car, or a burst water main.
Exactly. Affirming the consequent ignores the possibility of alternative explanations for the consequent being true. Just because the streets are wet doesn't mean it's raining. There could be other reasons.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. We need to consider all possible explanations, not just the most obvious one, when evaluating an argument. What's another fallacy we should be on the lookout for?
Let's talk about a fallacy that's often used to dismiss evidence or arguments that challenge a belief. The argument from ignorance. This fallacy assumes that something is true simply because it hasn't been proven false.
So it's like saying, no one has ever proven that Bigfoot doesn't exist, therefore Bigfoot must exist.
Yeah.
Or scientists can't explain everything about the universe, therefore God must exist.
Those are classic examples. The argument from ignorance shifts the burden of proof inappropriately. It's not up to skeptics to disprove a claim. It's up to the person making the claim to provide evidence in support of it. The absence of evidence is not evidence of existence.
It's a reminder that we should always base our beliefs on positive evidence, not on a lack of disproof. We shouldn't just believe things because they haven't been proven false. We should demand evidence before accepting a claim. What other fallacies should we be aware of?
Let's explore a fallacy that's often used to justify unethical or harmful actions. The appeal to force fallacy. This fallacy uses threats or coercion to persuade someone to accept a conclusion or take a particular action.
So it's like saying, agree with me or I'll fire you, or believe in this religion or you'll go to hell.
Those are extreme examples, but they capture the essence of the appeal to force fallacy. This fallacy replaces reason and evidence with intimidation and fear. It's a way of shutting down critical thinking and forcing people to comply through threats rather than persuasion.
It's a reminder that we should never resort to force or coercion to persuade others, and always strive to engage in respectful and rational dialogue, even when discussing difficult or controversial topics. Okay, give me another fallacy to add to my mental arsenal.
Let's talk about the wishful thinking fallacy. This fallacy involves believing something is true simply because you want it to be true, without any supporting evidence.
So it's like believing that you'll win the lottery, even though the odds are astronomically against you. Or believing that your favorite sports team will win the championship, even though they haven't been playing well.
Those are good examples. Wishful thinking can be comforting, but it can also lead to poor decisions and unrealistic expectations. It's important to base our beliefs on evidence and reality, not just on what we want to be true.
It's a reminder that we should ground our beliefs in reality and avoid letting our desires cloud our judgment. What other fallacies do we need to be aware of?
Let's explore a fallacy that's often used to make generalizations about entire groups of people, the stereotyping fallacy. This fallacy assumes that all members of a particular group share certain characteristics or traits without considering individual variations.
So it's like saying all politicians are corrupt, all lawyers are greedy, or all teenagers are lazy.
Those are classic examples of stereotypes. Stereotyping ignores the diversity within groups and can lead to prejudice, discrimination, and unfair judgments about individuals.
It's a reminder that we should treat each person as an individual and avoid making sweeping judgments about entire groups of people based on stereotypes. What other fallacies should we be on the lookout for?
Let's talk about the moving the goalposts fallacy, which is a common tactic in arguments. This fallacy involves changing the criteria for success or acceptance after an argument has been made, making it impossible for the opponent to satisfy the constantly shifting requirements.
So it's like setting someone up to fail by constantly raising the bar or changing the rules of the game. Like if I'm trying to prove a point, and every time I provide evidence, the other person just demands more evidence or changes the criteria for what counts as evidence.
Exactly. Moving the goalposts is a dishonest tactic used to avoid conceding a point or acknowledging the validity of an opposing argument. It's a way of ensuring that you always win the argument, no matter what evidence is presented.
It's a reminder that we should establish clear criteria for success or acceptance from the outset, and avoid shifting those criteria arbitrarily during a discussion or debate. If you're going to make a claim, you need to be clear about what evidence would support or refute that claim, and not change the rules of the game mid-argument. What other fallacies should we be aware of?
Let's explore a fallacy that's often used to dismiss evidence or arguments that challenge a cherished belief: the ad hoc rescue fallacy. This fallacy involves inventing explanations or justifications to protect a belief from being refuted, even if those explanations are implausible or contradict other evidence.
So it's like making up excuses to avoid admitting you're wrong, even when the evidence is stacked against you. Like saying, I know I saw a UFO, but the government must have covered it up, or my psychic powers didn't work this time because there was too much negative energy in the room.
Those are perfect examples of ad hoc rescues. The ad hoc rescue fallacy is a defense mechanism that allows people to cling to beliefs even when faced with overwhelming evidence to the contrary. It's a form of denial that prevents people from updating their beliefs in light of new information.
It's a reminder that we should be willing to revise our beliefs when presented with compelling evidence, even if it's uncomfortable or challenges our worldview. We shouldn't resort to making up excuses or inventing implausible explanations just to hold on to beliefs that are no longer supported by evidence. Okay, give me one last fallacy to round out my fallacy detecting skills.
Let's talk about the special pleading fallacy, which is all about making exceptions.
Yeah.
This fallacy involves applying a double standard or making an exception for oneself or one's group without justifying why that exception should be made.
So it's like claiming that the rules don't apply to you because you're special or different. Like saying, everyone else should pay their taxes, but I shouldn't have to because I'm a job creator.
That's a classic example of special pleading. This fallacy often involves a sense of entitlement or a belief that one is exempt from the standards that apply to others.
It's a reminder that we should hold ourselves to the same standards that we hold others to and avoid making special exceptions for ourselves or our group without a good reason. We shouldn't demand that others follow the rules if we're not willing to follow them ourselves. Okay, I think my brain is full of fallacies for now. Well, it was quite a workout. What other mental models can we explore from 100 mental models?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From philosophy to psychology to economics to history. We've journeyed through a diverse landscape of mental models, each offering a unique perspective on how the world works and how we can make better decisions.
It's been an incredible journey. I feel like I've upgraded my mental operating system, just like you said at the beginning. I've got a whole new set of tools for thinking critically, evaluating information, and navigating the complexities of the world.
That's fantastic to hear. And remember, this is just the beginning. There are so many more mental models out there waiting to be discovered and explored. As you continue your journey of learning and growth, keep an open mind, challenge your assumptions, and embrace the power of these thinking tools to make sense of the world and live a more fulfilling life.
That's great advice. So for our listeners, keep those mental gears turning, explore the world with curiosity and a critical eye, and always remember that there's always more to learn and new ways to grow. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into 100 mental models.
It's been a pleasure.